Hi there, business owner. Are you looking to improve your business knowledge? Do you want to see behind the scenes of successful businesses? And more importantly, are you looking to build a better business in just 15 minutes each week? If so, you're in the right place. Welcome to the 3Bs podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the 3Bs podcast, a special post-budget special from the courtesy of my own home. I'm not in the virtual studio today. It is very late in the evening. The budget was this afternoon and I wanted to get all the information into a compact 15 minutes for you as soon as possible. So the budget was today. It'll be yesterday by the time you see this or hear this if you're listening in a podcast platform. But the autumn budget was announced by Chancellor Right Honourable Rachel Reeves, who is the first female to ever deliver a budget in the UK, which is amazing in my opinion. But we were quite worried. The media had speculated this was going to be a really hard budget. There was going to be some really tough decisions to be made. And rightfully so, a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs were really anxious of what was going to happen. Before the budget, a background briefing is released in the House of Commons library that you can download and read, which gives you a lot of information on how the reports are put together, things like how the GDP growth and the spending is going on in the economy, as well as some of the things that are going to be discussed in the budget. So as of a couple of days ago, we knew that the main taxes weren't going to be increased. So VAT, income tax and employees' national insurance wasn't going to be increased in this budget. So that was a bit of a reprieve for some of the business owners and entrepreneurs among us. But there was quite a few changes, so let's go through them as quickly as possible in this 15-minute roundup so that you know what was said and what that could mean for you and your business. So first of all, the national minimum wage will be rising in April 2025. It's quite common now that the national minimum wage goes up every year without fail. Key point to note is they have got an 18 to 20-year-old rate this year, but they're planning to get rid of that eventually so that all adults over 18 in the workforce will have the same minimum wage. So if you are somebody who employs a lot of the younger workforce, so hospitality, bars, things like that tend to have the younger workers, that is something to think about because that is going to hit you a lot harder in years to come. And obviously they'll tell you in the budget when that happens, but there is an increase across all of the rates. But I do want to point out that 18 to 20-year-old bracket will be disappearing in the future. So the 16 to 17-year-old and apprenticeship rate is rising to £7.55 an hour from £6.40, which is an 18% increase. So it's quite a large jump if you have an apprentice in their first year or a 16 or a 17-year-old on your payroll. If they're 18 to 20 years of age, it has been increased to £10 an hour from £8.60 an hour, which again is a 16.3% increase, which is quite high, but that's to try and bring it in line with the national living wage for 21 plus, which is going up to £12.21 an hour from £11.44 with an increase of 6.7%. So that makes anyone who works 16 hours a week part-time at the national living wage, aged over 21, now will have an annual income of £10,158.72. Now that's gross, that's not their take home. And obviously you've got your employers, NI and things to go on top of that. But to give you an idea, that's like £846.56 a month. If you have full-time employees on your payroll who are 40 hours a week, over 21, from April 2025, that will give you an annual salary of £25,396.80 or £2,116.40 a month. That's probably one of the biggest things that you need to factor in as a business owner if you have a payroll is if you have a bookkeeper or accountant that can help you calculate that going forwards, then that's always really good. For our clients at ABCS UK, we do calculations for them of what their wage bill will look like next April if they keep things the way they are, taking into consideration the ages of their employees, if any of them are going to turn 21, for example, between now and next April, or when that will come into effect for them. Another big hit for employers is the employer's national insurance. Now, that was a big thing in the headlines before the budget, and that was that the employer's national insurance was going to increase quite significantly, and rightly, a lot of employers were worried. Thankfully, it wasn't as high as first predicted in the news, so it's a 1.2% increase to 15% NI. However, at the moment, employers' NI doesn't kick in until £9,100 a tax year per employee. That's going to go down to £5,000 a year from April 2025. To combat that, they have more than doubled the employment allowance. So currently it's £5,000 a year class 1 NI that's paid for by the government. That will be increasing to £10,500 from April 2025. But again, you have to qualify for that. So in order to qualify that, you have to be a director with at least one employee at that secondary threshold to qualify for the employment allowance. And it's not a grant where you get the whole amount, it's up to that £10,500 threshold. And it's based on the national insurance contributions, employer national insurance contributions that go through the payroll in that financial year. Again, speak to a bookkeeper or an accountant that can help explain this to you and help decipher how it affects your unique business and how all the changes might cause challenges and how you can mitigate those challenges before they arise. The other big thing in the budget was capital gains tax and inheritance tax. Now, as a business owner, inheritance tax won't affect the business necessarily, but it may affect you individually. And there is a full rundown summary on the ABCS UK blog, which I will link in the show notes if you want to know more about the personal changes that may affect you or affect your family going forward. Things like the child benefit, there wasn't much mentioned this time, but in the spring budget there was a lot mentioned about child benefit and childcare allowance and things like that. So we're going to focus just on business. The other thing in business is corporation tax. A lot of people were worrying that corporation tax would be increased or that the small business rate relief of 19% was going to be abolished. That's kept the same. Also, annual investment allowance has been kept the same, so you can purchase up to £1 million of assets a year and get 100% deduction from your corporation tax bill. And if you are in the research and development field, then the research and development relief rates have not changed and will not change going forward. The expected cut to fuel duty and freeze that the previous government brought into force was expected to be cut or abolished this time around, and Chancellor Rachel Reeves said that the 5p cut and frozen fuel duty is to be extended for another 12 months. So that's great for anyone that has a lot of transport costs and a lot of fuel costs. Also, capital gains tax, the business asset disposal relief lifetime cap of £1 million has been kept on, but the percentages of business asset disposal have been increased. So currently it's 10%. From April 2025, it's going up to 14%, and from April 2026, that's up to 18%. It's also worth noting, if you're in investing, that the Venture Capital Trust Scheme and the Enterprise Investment Scheme have also been extended further up to 2035. Also, for those with electric vehicles, you may have seen in the headlines that tax is going to start being charged on electric vehicles. The government announced today that the company car tax incentives for electric vehicles that are already in place will be continued from 2028 when they were due to change. And also, they're going to increase the differential between electric vehicles and non-electric vehicles, fully electric vehicles and non-fully electric vehicles, their first year rates from their vehicle excise duty. From 2025, you will see that much bigger differential between fully electric and non-fully electric. So if you think about hybrid, that's going to fall outside of that differential. Now, if you're in the hospitality, leisure, or retail industry, business rates are a big expense for most businesses, a big worry, and that temporary reduction that was brought in post-COVID was due to end. And the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has said that will end, but they are putting other things in its place. So for 25-26 tax year, there will be a 40% retail, hospitality and leisure rate relief with a cap of £110,000 per business. And the small business tax multiplier that currently exists will be in place from next year. And then from 26-27, they plan to put some permanently lower tax rates for retail, hospitality and leisure businesses, whilst also putting higher business rate multiples on those most desirable properties in order to increase the business rates that they get to offset that they reduce for the retail, hospitality and leisure businesses. Another thing that the hospitality businesses need to make a note of is the soft drinks levy is going to be increased to account for the inflation that's passed when it wasn't increased, and moving forward that increase will happen every year in line with the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So the soft drinks levy that was brought in will be brought up in line with inflation, and then you need to factor in the fact that that's going to increase every single year going forward in line with inflation. And for those UK pubs and those UK pub businesses, there was some positive news that there is a 1.7% reduction in draft duty for those draft beers, equating to about 1p a pint. But any cut in draft is always one that's highly championed in Britain, and it was definitely the one policy that was cheered for the loudest in the House of Commons. So they obviously enjoy a pint too, but for our pubs, it's a slightly lower cost for them, which is always good when people need it. And like I say, there is so much more, such as the carers allowance changes, the inheritance tax, capital gains tax, and flight duty for the private jets, and much more that was covered in the autumn budget. And you can catch all of that on the ABCS UK blog in writing. If you want me to do a more in-depth particular niche for a budget roundup, do let me know. All our details are in the show notes. I am more than happy to help you, but this is just a quick whistle-stop tour so that you can fully understand the bits that are relevant to you from the autumn budget. Thank you for listening or watching wherever you are. If this was useful for you, please do share it with another business owner. Let's help us all build better businesses together. And like, rate and review wherever you're watching and or listening. That really helps me get this podcast out to more business owners. And I am finally going to put the computer down and have a little rest. And I'll see you all next week for the next episode. Bye. And that brings us to the end of another episode of the 3Bs podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please connect with us on social media. Like, rate and review wherever you are listening to this podcast so that I can help more business owners build a better business. See you next week.